Hello everyone, my name is Krystle. I am on the McLean County Board and I represent West Normal. So if you live in Cardinal Court, the Oaks on Hovey, the College Parks Apartments, the college apartments that are right across from Heartland Community College, you are all in my district, everything west of Adelaide. I am your representative where you live. So thank you so much for coming here tonight and being a part of this event, talking about how much we're paying for rent in Normal. I first ran for the McLean County Board 2 years ago in 2022, and one of the things that I found while I was canvassing my district and talking to a lot of the students, especially graduate students that are living in District 4 right outside of campus, was that they were losing their housing. We had something happening in 2022 where we were coming out of the pandemic. All of the eviction moratoriums were lifted and landlords were taking that opportunity to get rid of a lot of their tenants that they could evict. And we had a lot of developers coming into town buying up these properties from landlords that were sick of being landlords. They didn't want to deal with renters anymore, and they were selling to large development corporations, and those companies were coming in and immediately raising rent by $300–400 in some cases. One of my friends was a graduate student at the time, and she was renting a townhouse in my district paying $850 a month. That townhouse got bought out, and she ended up being forced into a situation that wasn't ideal for her. She did have a child, and she had to scramble very quickly to figure out where she was going to live because the $400 increase on her townhouse is not something that she could afford working as a graduate worker at Illinois State University and living off of student loans and other kinds of unsustainable income. And luckily for her, she was able to quickly buy a house and move in there and be able to start her family and live comfortably, but that has not been the case for a lot of students that we are seeing that go to ISU and a lot of young people that live in our community. One of the big things that I found out when I was running for office is that in Normal, according to our recent census data, the population in Normal, the median age is 25 years old. We have a very, very young population here, mostly because of all of the students that go to ISU. Our total population in Normal is 54,000, and I believe the ISU student population makes up somewhere between like 15 and 19,000 of that. So you guys make a really big impact in our community, and that gives you a lot of power to be able to change things in the community, like getting our elected officials to support things that will make your quality of life better and more affordable, that will hopefully enable you to stay in our community after you graduate and start your families or careers or lives here as young adults. The problem that we're facing is a lot of these 25-year-olds are not making enough money to do this. The average income for a single adult in Normal, Illinois is $31,000 per year. That is $14.60 an hour. That means the majority of the people living in our community are not even making 15 bucks an hour. That's not even close to a living wage. And rent right now for a 2-bedroom apartment in McLean County is $1,260. That means if you're following the rent algorithm that you need to determine if you can afford it, to make 3 times that means that you would be making $45,000 a year in order to afford the average apartment here. So that's a $15,000 wage gap between what the average person in Normal, Illinois is making in wages and what they need to be making just to afford a basic apartment here. In the meantime, even though we know this census data is out there, we have the Economic Development Council and local governments really pushing that we need luxury housing, that we need apartments that are between $2,000 and $4,000 a month, knowing that the majority of the people in this community aren't going to be able to afford that. The more we build of this type of housing, these expensive units, the more it drives up the market rent on simple 2-bedroom apartments that we saw renting for $800 4 years ago that are now $1,260. So this is a conversation that I've been having continually in our community, the need to get the greed of corporate landlords under control, the ways that we need to be able to regulate price gouging on rent the same way that our legislators in Illinois are trying to regulate price gouging on prescription drugs. There's no reason that if we could take on the pharmaceutical industry, we can't take on the real estate industry. So I thank all of you for coming here tonight and being a part of this conversation. You're going to hear from Alex Duffy, who is your newly elected county board member for District 6, which is campus here. And he is also a student at Illinois State University and has been a part of a lot of the movements on campus for tenants' rights. So I would like to welcome him to the floor now to tell you about his experience with being a renter here in Normal and his priorities for the county board and what we can do about getting your rent under control. Thank you so much.
I understand that we're going to have some notes. So how are you tonight? You doing okay?
I'm good.
Good deal. Well, thanks the coalition so much for inviting me to come speak. It was an honor as soon as can I close this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry. When I got the invite to speak, I jumped at the opportunity. I know we just kind of obviously got done with, if you haven't heard, an election a few days ago. So and obviously people are still reeling from that. Emotionally, and that's totally normal. It makes sense. But I'm really proud of kind of what we did last night locally here in McLean County, and I just kind of wanted to hit on that. And like Krystle said, I kind of want to just talk about my own experiences as a tenant here in McLean County, and is just kind of I want to end off on what we can do because. I feel like there has been a lot of doom, obviously, in our social media feeds. But I do, despite everything that's going on at the national level, I feel hopeful for us here locally in McLean County, specifically for renters in McLean County. I think we actually have a pretty bright future, and I think we have the opportunity to get some stuff done. So I'm going to kind of just introduce myself a little bit. I know Krystle did, you did. My name is Alex, obviously. Like she said, I currently go to ISU. I'm on my 4th year, and I'm studying political science right now. And I originally was from Morris, Illinois. It's where I was born and raised, went to high school and stuff. And kind of like a lot of you, I'm sure, came here my freshman year of college. And I just fell in love with Bloomington Normal. Being a small town kid, finally getting out to a bigger area, I just loved it. I love the people. I love our, we have a great uptown. We have so much potential and promise. So, I ended up moving here and kind of moving here full time. And with my experiences, I've been in student government. I've been a member on their e-board as well in previous years of College Democrats. So wherever I'm at, I like to stay pretty involved. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to represent not only us as students, but kind of just, renters at that county level. So last night, or not last night, I guess on Tuesday night, I know we, like I said, didn't necessarily the results go the way I had wanted it to nationally, but I just kind of wanted to hit on some of the successes, I would say, for renters, especially with the kind of a renter-oriented thought on the election locally. I just kind of wanted to update you guys, in case you didn't know, we for the first time in McLean County's history, on Tuesday, Democrats took control over the board's majority. So we now have a 12-8 majority on the McLean County board. Other than that, we also sent back our state representative and our state senator. The reason I kind of tell you about this is what that means. I think that's huge and it's super important. With the Democrats taking over the board, we're going to have more planned labor agreements with some of our local unions throughout the county. We're going to have more equitable pay and resources. You kind of mentioned the median income here. I would like to see our wages for county employees and officials increase, and kind of why we're here tonight. I think for the first time in a while, we have a seat at the table for renters, specifically student renters. So I'm super excited. I think we have, like I said, a lot of potential. Prior to running for office, my first time obviously signing a lease, because I came here for college, my first time signing a lease was with none other than the Flats. Not my favorite, leasing company, but, and the reason for that, I signed with the Flats, which is pretty expensive. I did not want to, or kind of couldn't even really afford to pay for it at the time. I had to take out loans. It was my first process being a tenant and signing a lease. So I had made the mistake of waiting until the month of January to start looking for a place once I was done with the dorms, getting out there into an apartment. And you're looking for apartments, looking for options. I come to find nothing's really available within a drivable distance. So I was kind of forced into a position where I had to sign a lease with the Flats and take out a lot of loans I'm still paying for. And I think that is a problem. I think especially in an area like Normal, Illinois, we have a land in District 6. We have a lot of people who this is their very first time looking at a lease. And this is their first time going through the process of, looking for a place to live. And, when you have companies that are putting in these weird and arbitrary clauses into their lease, charging you for things you might have not necessarily have done or need replaced or need fixing, it is intimidating. It's super intimidating. Some of the things we've done, just kind of as of recently, and Krystle, you kind of via phone call, you told me it was almost a year ago today.
A year ago yesterday.
A year ago yesterday, Normal Town Council passed the 12-hour notice for tenants. So essentially, now, if you sign a lease, your landlord has to give you a 12-hour notice before entering your apartment, whether that's, to show it for a tour or what have you. And a lot of that, it came from students, a lot of representatives in student government. I know if you guys know Braxton Myers, he really spearheaded that effort, and I was very fortunate to kind of work alongside of him. But that's just one example of some of the things we can do when we elect the right people locally. We can have more rights for people, dignity for people, whether you own a home or whether you rent. That's important. Something I would like to see, though, I would like to advocate, especially I was elected 2 days ago, and there's only so much that we can do at the county level for tenants and for renters, and you have my commitment here tonight. I think of people like you when I go to vote, because I am a renter myself. But some of the things we can do, though, in my position, I would love to advocate our state representative Sharon Chung and our state senator Dave Kaler. I would like to advocate for them to consider capping rent here in the state of Illinois, or at least giving municipalities within the state of Illinois the option to explore capping rent rates. Because, Krystle, I know you kind of use the figures and the numbers. Rent is too damn high in Bloomington Normal right now. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I need you guys to sing. I need you guys to vote, and I need you guys to get out and start electing people who have the minds of renters in mind when they vote. I would also like to commit here tonight to you guys. I have a 4-year term, but throughout my term and of these 4 years, I can commit to you tonight that I am not going to be accepting any money from the 3 major leasing companies, that being Sammy, First Sight, and Young America. Which have regularly funded the campaigns here locally of a lot of officials who seek to help, help people who own properties. I would just kind of like to end off with a call of action here. I think it's important that we keep fighting, and I know I kind of had started this with, I know there's a lot of doomerism online, obviously with the results of the national election, but I think it's super important that we continue to fight at the local level, especially because we have so much momentum already, and I think the sky's the limit for us in terms of things we can get done if we continue at the rate we are right now. I can tell you personally, I'm going to keep fighting. I can do this all day with people who try to take away the rights of renters. I will go tit for tat for them, and I really want to make sure that we have fair and equitable practices for renters Again, whether you own a home or whether you're renting, everyone needs to have a certain standard of dignity and respect in where they live. So with that, I'm going to kind of pass it over to our next speaker. But again, I just want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to kind of come talk to you tonight. I'll stick around after if anyone has any questions. And like I said, my term is for 4 years, so I'll be representing you guys for a little bit. If you have any concerns, whether that's your sidewalk needs to get repaved or what have you, or something big, whatever it is, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I want to be a resource. So yeah, with that, I'll pass it over. So thank you guys so much.
Hi guys, thank you so much for coming out today. I'm Katie Hamende. I'm a junior cybersecurity major here at ISU. I don't have the status or the position that Alex Duffy has or Krystle Abel, but I am a student here and I care about our community, I care about our lives here. I'm on the executive board for Young Democratic Socialists of America, I know. But yeah, so I'm always out here organizing, always trying to get people to come to events like these, and it's really good that everybody today has showed up. So yeah, I helped Krystle and Diego organize this because I care about rent, obviously. Some of the common horror stories that we hear all the time, right, as students at ISU. Just weird things like 6 people at a time living in Watterson lounges because Cardinal Court has kicked them out, or the money that we don't have, that our student jobs aren't paying us. Barely enough to get by. There's a First Sight little advertisement that I drive past every morning that says, "Live close to campus, save more money." I can't afford to live close to campus. It taunts me every day on my drive. I pay a reasonable amount of rent, but I can't afford to live at the $600 apartments. I'm sure the flats are even more, Alex. I don't know how much you paid, but $800 maybe at the flats. Just not reasonable. And then we have our student teachers, people that are going to work a 40-hour work week, not get paid a dime and still have to worry about rent. A friend of mine today said something that really resonated with me. They said, "I think about money constantly as a necessity. It's driven into our brains over and over when we're in these situations like these, that money is constantly an issue. It's always on top of our minds. Unaffordable housing is the #1 cause of homelessness in the U.S. It's a scary situation. We all feel it. We all feel the reality of the rising costs here in America. I know the last town hall that I was at for this event, a Hartland professor got up and said that he was homeless for 2 years because of rising housing costs. And so even jobs like those, prestigious jobs, you're not safe. Rising costs affect everybody here. So we can all really feel it, especially after this election. I feel tension from everyone, not just, no matter who you voted for, we're all on edge, we're all scared. And that's because we all know, we all see it everywhere we look. So yeah, I encourage you guys all to, instead of like pointing fingers at each other and getting mad, because I know that's what we love to do, is get mad in America. We love to point fingers and fight each other, but I encourage you guys to fight the common enemy, greed, that we see from places like First Sight and Sammy and Young America. Of course, what can we do about that? Vote in local elections, vote for people like Alex, vote for people like Sharon Chung, David Kaler, people that are going to stand up for our rights, or at least renters' rights in America. But what else can we do? We can also show up in numbers. I'm always showing up, I'm always organizing, and I'd like it for it not just to be me shouting into the void. I'd like everybody to come out all of the time. And because they listen to this, they listen to people in numbers, and of course, like Alex said, preaching to the choir, because you guys are already here, you guys are already showing up. But as long as you invite a friend, keep going. Mass organization of people united to work towards a common goal is what I would argue is the most effective method towards change. So yeah, let's give ourselves a quick pat on the back. Let's keep going, and thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate you guys. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much, Krystle, for those wonderful speeches to kind of set the tone. And thank all of you for being here tonight, right? So, I mean, obviously, there was a very momentous day a couple days ago. Elections are very important in a country like this, but I think what I see too right here is that, you know, democracy is not just about going to the voting booth and ticking a box and then going home the next day. It's exactly meetings like this. Maybe you told a friend about this meeting, maybe you brought your family here, and it's exactly like this how change happens, with people coming together, organizing under a common cause, and talking about the issues that are important to us. So again, just thank you for coming tonight. My name is Diego Morales. I am an organizer with the Lift the Ban on Rent Control Coalition. I live in Chicago, I grew up in Rockford. But I was going to do a little presentation and talk about our campaign, to talk about rent and housing in this area and the state. But really quick, I wanted to get a quick show of hands. Who in the room is a renter? That's a solid majority, okay. Raise your hand if your rent has gone up in the past year. Okay. Does anybody want to maybe volunteer how much their rent has gone up in the past year or so? How many dollars?
100, from 900 to 1,000.
Wow.
That's with utility costs too.
Wow, that's more than 10%. $100. How much, anybody else get their rent jacked up?
$760 to $850, and that's without utilities.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's like 90 bucks. That's a lot. Anybody else?
I live at the flats, and yeah, they keep going up, and I'm paying about $150 more, including utilities.
Wow. That is awful. Yeah, I mean, second shout out for that great company right there. So yeah, how do y'all feel about that? Does that feel good? Right, that sucks. Yeah, I've gotten my rent jacked up about $150 in the past year as well. You know, it sounds like a small amount of money, right? But you know, a little bit on the tipping point means like, oh, I gotta shift to this, I gotta maybe delay my car payment, or I gotta like, you know, eat the cheaper brand of pasta from the store, or whatever it happens to be, and it can really have an effect on your life. And you know, we live in a society in which we have major companies that make a lot of money. All that money that you're paying in rent is going to somebody who doesn't have to deal with the same issues as you do. Probably lives in a very, very nice condo, home somewhere. There's probably a vacation right now somewhere warm. From the money that you give them every single month. And so what we want to talk about is, how do we change this? How do we fight for justice in this kind of a system? And that's why we consider rent control to be such an important issue. I'm going to go through just some basic housing facts for you. So in Illinois, a couple terms that you should know is rent burden. So the way that the federal government tracks housing costs is how much of your income are you spending on housing every month or every year, right? So if you're rent burdened, that means you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing. So raise your hand if you spend about more than a third of your check on rent or mortgages or whatever. Okay, great. Well, not great, but there's representation here. So, and then there's severe rent burden. That is when your rent and your housing costs more than 50% of your income. So raise your hand if you're severely rent burdened. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's not a fun place to be. Well, in Illinois, about half of renters in the state are rent burdened, 47.6%. And while people are being rent burdened, rent has been going up, especially since the pandemic. Since the pandemic, you've seen a lot of consolidation in the housing market, lots of investors coming in, buying up homes, buying up land, kicking people out, jacking up rents. It's something that maybe you would heard about or thought about happening in cities where we call it gentrification, but you're seeing, especially in towns like Bloomington, Normal, where you have this kind of captive student population, the exact same process is happening here. You know, since the pandemic, rent has increased statewide 55% since early 2019, early 2020. We are the fourth in the entire country for rent increasing from year to year. And there's also some numbers here from McLean County, very similar. 51%, more than half of people here are rent burdened, and since the pandemic, there's been about 31% increase in rents, and that is just unsustainable. Has anybody seen a 30% increase in their check? In okay. If you do, let me know. I think it's better. That makes me a little more. So one of the worst aspects about housing insecurity and the housing crisis is that it leads what it can lead to. And the number one cause of homelessness in the country is unaffordable housing. So the last time there was a survey of evictions in Illinois was in 2016. And just here in McLean County, just here in these boundaries, back then, which was a much smaller number than it is now, back then it was 756 people were taken to court and kicked out of their homes every single year. Just here in McLean County. Homelessness, since 2019, there's about 12,000 people who live without shelter. Again, that is a liberal number because since the pandemic, that number has skyrocketed. And there's also this other category, which I think some people actually mention, these people living in couches and lounge rooms and things like that. They're called doubled up, where you may sleep under a roof at night, but it's not your roof, and you don't know how long you will have that kind of place to stay. Maybe you're staying at an auntie's house, maybe you're staying with a friend, etc. That is a form of homelessness that doesn't get talked about enough. But when you factor in something like that, it's 170,000 homeless people who live like that in Illinois. We're called Lift the Ban, and the reason for that is that in 1997, going back, there was this conservative lobbying group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council Group. Yes. So ALEC is famous for greatest hits like right-to-work laws that made it harder to form and join a union. The Stand Your Ground law that was used to justify the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida. The law that made it a felony to protest pipelines, actually here in Illinois, if you remember that, if you've ever been in environmental organizing. So, not the coolest or friendliest people that you'd ever meet. But in 1997, they passed what was called the Rent Control Preemption Act. They were passing these laws that basically prohibited any state or municipality from regulating rents in any way whatsoever. And they were doing this across the entire country. And in fact, currently there are 33 states, including Illinois, that have had this ban. And no one has been able to get rid of it so far. We're hoping to change that in Illinois. Something I think that is not understood quite enough is that rent control is not this crazy, like far-out, radical idea. It is very, very common in most parts of the world, including the developed OECD nations, but even here in the United States, there are actually 7 states here who have some form of rent control. You may have heard about California, you may have heard about New York, but did you know that it's also in Oregon, in Minnesota, not too far from here, Maine, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. This is, these places have rent control regimes. Some are younger, some are older, but it's not some crazy idea, and go to any of these places, the sky has not fallen in the way that the real estate law people tell you it will, if they have some form of rent control. So that's why we're called Lift the Ban. A little bit about our campaign. We launched in 2017. We started out humbly as 4 community organizations in the city of Chicago that represented a multiracial coalition. Everybody told us, oh, rent control, yeah, that's cool and all, but you're crazy, no one likes it, the academics hate it, the politicians hate it, it's blah, 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 blah. We were like, you know what, let's put that to the test. So we started off as 4 organizations, and right now we have nearly 40 statewide. That includes labor unions, that includes legal aid organizations, student associations like many that are on campus, community boards, etc. One of the first things that we did is we wanted to kind of call the question, oh, people say this is such a bad idea, well, let's ask regular, everyday working people what they think. So in 2018, we put referenda across 12 different wards. So a little bit about Chicago government, there's 50 different wards, 50 different districts. Way too many if you ask me. But we put the question, collected signatures to put the question on the ballot in 12 different wards. That was like, would you support lifting the ban on rent control so we can start talking about regulating rents in the city of Chicago? And everywhere we put the question, the north side of the city, the south side of the city, the west side of the city, it got no less than 70% approval. So we were able to change the conversation. And if, I don't know, I guess you weren't there necessarily to see this, but every politician that ran in 2019, whether it was in Chicago or even J.B. Pritzker, people running for governor, they were all asked, do you support lifting the ban on rent control? We made it a big mainstream issue. So it was kind of a display of how, yeah, even a small group, that everybody thinks you can't do nothing, You get together with a good idea, you work at it, you can really change the conversation. And also, spoiler alert, J.B. Pritzker, who was running for governor at that time, said he supported lifting the ban on rent control. Haven't heard much about that since he got elected, but we can get to that later. Some other small pieces of history, you know, we did get a committee vote in the state legislature in 2021. So I guess I don't know if this was obvious before, but the rent control ban was passed at the state level. So what we have to do is pass the repeal that law at the state level. That's why this is focused on your state senator, your state representative, and the governor. You know, because like we have great board members here who want to do stuff, who want to help. They just want to help people like you against the greed of these corporations, but they can't. They're being gagged by the state. So that's why this is focused on state governor. And now, one interesting piece is that we used to have a piece, the legislation was very simple, it was one line, it was repeal the Rent Control Preemption Act. Very easy, but the real estate lobby is very powerful, and the money that they make ends up going back into the races, the elected races that people mentioned before, and it becomes a larger issue I'll get to in a moment. But basically, we had to kind of come to some kind of a compromise. So we did come to a sort of compromise. So our bill now has kind of two main components. The first, with respect to rent control, is that it opens up a path to lifting the ban on rent control. The idea is, if we pass this bill, it gives you the power through referenda to lift the ban where you live. So you can have the referenda here in Normal. You can have the referenda here in the area around your campus, all of McLean County. Whichever seems appropriate to you, you ask the question, do we want to lift the ban? If it passes, that becomes law. It's a way to kind of democratize the process, to say, well, it might be different in Normal than it is in Peoria, than it is in East St. Louis, etc. So this is a way of us, well, let's have the people decide. The second aspect of the bill is that it expands rent protections across the state. So in Cook County, there's an existing sort of like tenant's bill of rights that gives you power as a tenant. It was passed not too long ago, I think in 2019. And so what our bill would do is take those same protections and expand it all across the state. So it would apply to you. What that could mean, for instance, and we can get into the specifics, is it protects you from retaliation, for instance. Because what you see often is, once you start asking questions of your landlord, oh, like why is the heat not working? Why is the stairwell look like it's gonna, you know, kill my mom when she tries to get up to see me for Thanksgiving or whatever? Why is there water coming in through my roof? What they'll do is they'll retaliate against you, right? They'll be like, you know, not only will they not get to it, but then they'll find excuses to jack your rent up, to push you out. Right? That's one of the most common ways that we see it, landlords abuse their power. So what this does is it protects you against that. Creates penalties, you can take them to court, etc. Other things, you know, limits on move-in fees. Move-in fees are going totally crazy. Proper notice for terminations of lease and entry. Right? Y'all won the 12-hour entry. I think it's actually 24 to 48 hours in the Cook County one. I can double check, but it's definitely longer than 12. We can get into the specifics. Right now, we have 14 co-sponsors or sponsors on the bill. That includes downstate and suburban legislators. One thing I want to just talk about our campaign, you know, we started off in Chicago, and one of the phrases that we hear is like, oh, that's a Chicago problem. That's not our problem. I actually remember, not to put him on, well, to put him on blast, David Kaler, actually, the first time I spoke with him, he was like, that's a Chicago thing. And then we had a resident of a trailer park home say like, hey, actually, I got my lot rent jacked up like $200, and there's this company that came and bought it. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, now, okay, this is an issue that affects my community. So it's a really big deal that we now have support in our building support across places in Illinois, such as Bloomington Normal and others. We had the first downstate legislator, Sue Shear of Springfield, sign on to our bill. First downstate legislator, thanks to Rosa, actually, the organizer in the back, and her work in Springfield, Illinois. Shout out, Rosa. Thank you. And it just shows the power of organizing. I wanted to get to like open comment and questions and stuff like that, but just to run really quick of some of the tenants' rights, because people ask this question a lot. One of the things that our bill would do is, if there are certain repairs that aren't being done, that's the responsibility of your landlord, you have the right to withhold your rent. You have the right to say, you're not holding up your end of the deal, so I'm not obligated to give you my hard-earned money to keep my unmaintained house. That's a way to like pressure them to behave better. right? Excessive late fees, limit security deposits to 1.5 times rent. Also create standards for adequate heating in the winter. That's a huge deal for us in Chicago that we rely on a lot, is that by law you have to keep the temperature at least, I think, 68, 69 degrees during winter months. If they don't, that is a big no-no. Consequences for unlawful entry and harassment. And the big one is frankly protection against retaliation. It allows you to express your rights as a tenant. What does rent control look like? This is just a map of all the different places I mentioned before, the 7 different states that have some form of rent control or other. Minnesota is one of the most recent, in St. Paul, and yeah, exciting things happening. Oregon and Washington State, actually, there's a huge campaign right now, helped in part by labor. There's a labor union pushing rent control there. And some specifics, because some people will try to, they bring up concerns, and there's some valid concerns. It's a policy they're not necessarily used to. And so what people may not be exposed to is how rent control actually works in practice in these kinds of places. So back in World War II, that's one of your classic kind of rent control policies were in place, which is just like a hard cap, which is just like your rent doesn't go up at all. It's like hard price fixing. And that's just not what rent control looks like now in the sort of modern era. What it does is it creates a sort of control and cap on the rate that it can go up from year to year. So let's say they don't, a rent control could look like you can't have your rent go up more than 5% from year to year. Now, it sucks to have your rent go up 5%, but it's certainly better than what we see in a lot of these cases where they jack it up 10%, 20%. I think there was a group recently in my neighborhood that was organizing a tenant union, and they got their next rent bill jacked up to 50%. So this will help stop those extreme cases and kind of steady increased stabilization for housing prices. Typically there's a rent board that usually will have some representation between tenants, renters, and homeowners that basically sets what that rate would look like. And you can do all kinds of things. You can index it to different things. You can index it to inflation. You can index it to interest rates, different costs. The point is that there's flexibility. It's not this crazy, draconian thing. There's other things like rent justification. Let's say you're a small mom and pop landlord, and like a tree, comes down and busts your roof open, and it's like, that's very expensive. There's ways that we can get exceptions where you can go to the board and be like, hey, look, there's huge costs that I have to deal with, spend tens of thousands of dollars to repair a roof or something like that. Like, there's no way for me to do this without raising the rent maybe a little past the limit. The point is it's not, end of the world, as some of the real estate lobby folks try to say for your mom and pop, smaller landlords. Typical exemptions also include new construction, buildings built past a certain date, owner-occupied buildings. This is how it operates in places like New York and California. So just to kind of help inoculate people against some of the talking points that you hear, because it's not really based on how this operates in reality. So just a couple of quick facts too about you all, and actually I can't wait to hear more from you all what it's like trying to find housing and live on campus. But there is a lot of you all, and y'all make up about 40% of the population of Normal. That's a lot. That's also, think about enormous power. Imagine you all organizing together, advocating in your own self-interests. That is a lot of people. 92.6% of you receive financial aid, so I'm assuming almost every one of you. That goes to show that, we're not all, cash is not super abundant necessarily in the student population, right? We have those we have to pay and the struggles that we go against too. And then, like was mentioned earlier, yesterday is the anniversary of your successful fight against some of these massive corporate landlords like Sammy, Young America, and First Sight, winning that notice for entry. Huge, by the way. Super. Can we just get a quick round of applause for you all? Winning something, that's dope. And so there are people trying to tell me about the big four. So Young America, Sammy, First Sight, and Class Act, I think. Of them, Young America is the biggest. They rake in about $20.7 million every year. First Sight, I think, was about like $13 million. And I think what's important to think about that is, of course, that's the money that we pay them every single month. But that's also money that, as Alex mentioned, that they spend on your elections that they spend on the people who represent you, who try to advocate for their interests and not yours. That's just a very important point to make. So thanks for folks, we love politicians and candidates who run not taking that kind of money and rely instead on grassroots energy. So, how can you get involved? Well, you have two folks that I would like you to introduce yourselves to and maybe get in contact with. The first is State Representative Sharon Chung, who represents your district. I got her phone number and an email up on the screen. She's super key in order for us to help get legislation like this passed. In the State House, actually with the help of a woman who used to be an organizer in the band, actually, Hamende, who is actually now a congresswoman in Chicago. When she was in the House, helped create the Housing Committee, a place in the state legislature that could focus on housing issues. There wasn't one before, if you can believe that. There was no committee in the state legislature who was talking about the housing crisis. So she helped create that. So Sharon Chung is in the House. Her support is super crucial in order to get something like this passed. So please get involved. We also, and reach out to her. We have like a form letter. It should be on the pass out handout thing. If not, I will share it on the screen in just a moment. But it has like a pre-written letter that you can like edit if you would like. You can get super nasty with it if that's how you get super nice with it. Either way works. You hit send and it'll send it to your representatives automatically. We've got like also bit.ly links for our newsletter and renter stories. So something that I'm wrapping up, but one thing I just want to say is there's a lot to talk about when it comes to like the data, about like following the trends, et cetera, et cetera. But in my experience doing this, being in this campaign for almost since 2018, 6 years now, there's nothing that is more powerful than you telling your story, right? Than you allowing yourself a certain vulnerability to stand up for yourself and talk about how the injustice has been done, not just to you, but yourself. You getting involved and talking with your legislators, like those kinds of stories, that's when we have seen people go from a no to a yes. So I just want to reemphasize that point because if you have those stories, if you know people with those stories, please share them here in this meeting, share them with us through this link, and let's talk and chat afterwards because that's really the fuel with which we win certain things like this. So with that, that wraps up my presentation. Thank you all again for listening. And for this section now, we're going to open it up. If people have any questions, you can answer questions. But also, if you just have comments that you would like to make, if you have a story that you would like to tell, if you know somebody who's struggling with rent, or you yourself are, we would love to hear what that's like, what you're going through. So, yeah. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
I was going to ask,